Welcome to WRM, Work Relationships Matter. I'm your host, the Edward Jones, a certified life coach who specializes in work relationships. Now, whether you work in a private corporation, nonprofit organization, or operate as an entrepreneur, work relationships matter. Amos Holts, a financial educator and coach, is here with me today to share his thoughts and experiences that will be beneficial to you. Welcome, Amos.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Jones.
And it's great to have you here. It's great to catch up. And as
Yes.
I mentioned before we started, love your background. I see that in your future.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. This is where we're headed.
Well, great, great. Now, the thing that I go to mixers, you probably have too, and you have your name tag on, and somebody sees your name, and they walk up and say, "Amos, what do you do?"
Hmm.
Now, it's always good to know what people do, but I'm more interested in knowing who people are first.
Okay.
So tell us about your background, maybe things that have influenced you when you were young, that maybe helped get you going or inspired you in some way. So tell us a little bit about who Amos is before we get started.
Well, Ed, I'm a native of Sacramento, California, born and raised here. Had an opportunity to go to school at Alabama A&M University, where I got my degree in computer science. And it was interesting, just kind of going growing up. I always had been pretty ambitious and pretty uh, competitive in various areas of my life, whether it was academics. I was always competing to be the number one in academics, whether it was sports. I was competing to be number one or the best that I could be in sports, and just various areas of my life. So, as I graduated from college, I had an opportunity to be, an engineer and just travel around the world doing engineering things. But I also discovered that I had a passion for people. I had a passion for teaching, and that's something I really enjoyed doing. So, yeah, that's.
Well, one thing I'd like to ask is that competitive nature, where did that come from?
I think honestly, the era that I grew up in the '80s, when kids actually had to go outside and play, right? They don't do that so much nowadays. But I was fortunate enough to be in a neighborhood where there were a lot of boys, and we all played all the sports: basketball, football, baseball, and I think being able to play some of those individual slash team sports, it helps to stir that competitive nature.
Okay, very good.
Mhm.
Okay, so and you went, then you got older, went through high school, and then what'd you do after high school?
So after high school, I immediately went into college, Alabama A&M University, and pursued computer science, a degree in computer science. And I'll tell you what, that was kind of a tough degree to pursue because there was a lot of math involved. There was a lot of computing, and computers involved. Whereas prior to, all we really knew about computers was maybe video games and some very simple word documentation, but you really had to kind of dig in deep to understand how computers work and how computers function. And so after high school, we went in immediately into that, and I was fortunate enough to get a few internships over at General Dynamics in Phoenix, Arizona. Really, they call it Tempe, Arizona, but Phoenix and Tempe are one and the same in my book. But yeah, I got a chance to go out there and start a career with General Dynamics in Phoenix, Arizona.
Well, excellent. Now, the one thing that I think about, I know a lot of people have trouble or think they have trouble with math.
Yeah.
And so I think about, high school. I know for myself, initially I dodged math in high school, then had to come back and get it later on when I went for higher degrees. I had to go back and get that I dodged before. So people who may be interested in computer science, but maybe a little bit afraid of math, what would you say to them?
So my advice that I could give anybody that's going to get involved with math, or anything that seems to be challenging. It doesn't necessarily just have to be math, but definitely math. What you want to do is you want to get a tutor. And I guess in the adult world, they call it a mentor. But you need to get yourself a tutor definitely while you're in your academic phase, because your tutor is there, especially if they're good to. Now, all tutors aren't the same, so make sure you get one that you like. But um, tutors are there to break down the steps. Coaches are there to break down the steps. Mentors are there to break down the steps. So if there's a gap that you're missing from point A to point B, your coach, mentor, tutor is supposed to help bridge that gap. So you can say, oh, that makes sense. I can now proceed. And that's exactly from day one in college. I pursued a tutor. I looked at that classroom, that classroom curriculum. I said, whoa, this seems like it's going to be a challenge. So from day one, I went off and got a tutor. I did not hesitate. A lot of people, and I'll just finish this question with this, is a lot of people go through college or go through something and they say, whoa, that's hard. And they either give up or they wait until the last minute where they're getting ready to fail to say, oh, I need some help. Well, it's too late now. Well, the moment that you feel that uneasiness in your spirit and in your soul, you say, hey, I think I'm going to need some help. You need to go get the help at that moment. Don't wait until the 12th hour. Get it at that moment, because then you'll be able to have a higher probability of success.
That is excellent advice. I mean, with that advice, we could end this podcast right there, because that's what people can, that's news that people can use.
That's right.
But let's go further with this. Now, we're at General Dynamics, and you do a lot of things well. And when I thought about the question about your career and did you choose it or did it choose you? You've got so many things that you can do. So I'm thinking you've done a lot of things well. So I guess the main thing about it, of all those things you do, which one is pulling you the most?
So at this moment, really, financial education and empowerment has been pulling me the most. I was able to get, fully licensed. I've been in the financial industry for about 10 years. And what's pulling me the most and was the whole fact of probably, it's probably still really rampant, but over the last 2 or 3 years, there was a lot of, I should say pre-COVID, there was a lot of news coming out about all the young Black men and the young Black women that were getting killed by police brutality or police misunderstandings or whatever they want to label it as. And one of the things that I noticed is that when these individuals had passed, it was just like, oh, well, just another person dead. So the family doesn't improve, nor does the community improve.
Okay.
And so what ends up happening is those families typically don't have any type of insurance or life insurance or anything like that in place. So what happens is, we all know the story. It's time to go get the fish fry. It's time to go get the chicken box or the car wash or something like that. And I said, that's that gap that I was talking about. That's that point A to point B bridge that we need to help build, because what happens is we don't hear these type of incidences happening in maybe what we would consider a majority neighborhood. So
one thing I want to do is clarify, because for some people who may not be aware, when you talked about the fish dinners, the chicken boxes, et cetera,
oh yes,
it's raising money to bury the person.
That's
So I
correct.
just wanted to throw that out there for those who may not be familiar with that.
That's correct. And that's typically in the African American community, but even when you go to the Hispanic community, a lot of people didn't know this, and I didn't know this as well, was that when you see sometimes the mom and pop or the lady that's selling the tamales or the burritos or whatever in the Walmart parking lots, sometimes they're there to raise money for somebody that passed because they didn't have those insurance needs. So to make a long story short, what I've noticed is that we don't have, because of our miseducation about money, and sometimes it's it's not even a miseducation, it's just the complete ignorance of it. We make the money, but we say, well, what do we do with it? Well, we give it back in the form of buying consumerism, essentially. But when you look at your Caucasian, when you look at your Asian, and some and European type communities in this country, we don't always hear a lot of the challenges and the financial struggles that are presented. We always hear like, oh, this African American male or African American female got shot in their community, and it's an impoverished neighborhood, and et cetera, et cetera. But in the upper, middle, and upper class neighborhoods, you don't really hear that. And so, my thought and my solution is that education and empowerment is the way, especially in this realm, in this industry, because elementary, middle school, and high school, and even college, it's never been taught. It's never been
So,
taught.
so tell me, how do you help people? How do you reach them? You've identified the problem very clearly. So
Mhm.
now the help is on the way in the name of Amos Holts. How do you help people?
And I help them. I help people in various ways. I've done a lot of one-on-one consultations with customers and clients. But what we want to do is we're looking to expand that now. We want to be able to reach the masses, and so we've been actually teaching financial empowerment courses that discuss things very simple, fundamental principles like budgeting, like getting rid of your debt, like being able to invest for the long term. Because one of the things that I've noticed about investing, and you probably heard it as well, is now that we're into this cryptocurrency world, now that we're into these NFTs, non-fungible, forget what the T stands for, but non-fungible objects. When we look at these things, we're looking at, I call it a lottery mentality.
Hmm.
That's what I call it personally. Is that we're saying, man, if I get this cryptocurrency, I'm gonna be a millionaire in 2 weeks, or a month or a year or whatever. And while that's nice, and I hope it happens, just as fast as you get it, it's going to be just about as fast as you lose it. But if you have the right fundamentals in place, and you're taking the time to be methodical and disciplined about your approach, then you'll be able to keep it, and you'll be able to build a legacy. So what I do is I teach people basic fundamentals, basic strategies on how to utilize these tools, and we walk them through the process. We take a hand-holding approach. So one of the and we'll talk about it later, but one of the thoughts is education and execution.
Okay.
We have to educate, and then we have to execute. And that's one of the niches that I discovered while in this industry, is that a lot of people want to teach, a lot of people want to write a book, a lot of people want to do video series, but nobody wants to take you by the hand and help you walk through this process.
So you take a client and you would basically kind of break things down. It's almost like reversing the role. When you were in college, you had a kind of a tutor mentor to kind of
Mhm.
help guide you through that. Do you do the same kind of thing with your clients?
Absolutely. It's kind of like a financial tutor or a financial
Mm,
coach or a financial advisor, however
mm,
people want to label it, but it's exactly that. I know a lot of people often tend to have airs about themselves. They say, well, I've been working for 10, 15, 20 years, and I got this house and I got this car and I'm doing pretty good.
mhm.
Well, yeah, you are doing pretty good. But do you really know what it takes, or what's going to be required for you to stop working, no work, zero work, and be able to live solely off of what you have accumulated? And that is where we're talking about financial independence and financial freedom. And yes, you need a coach. You need a tutor, if you will, that says, "Hey, let's make some adjustments here. This is how the formula works," and so that you can get the outcome that you want. Just like you said, a math tutor. You have to
And
follow these process. Go ahead.
one thing I was thinking about is there are two people that I think about when I hear what you're saying.
Hmm.
One is the person who is right out of college, has college debt, and looking for a job, et cetera, who may need to get started early on, getting their mindset ready for when they do have things. The other
Absolutely.
one is that person who has a high income but may not have a lot of wealth.
Yes.
So let's start with the second one. If someone has, explain the difference between income and wealth, and how you'd work with someone who has income but not a lot of wealth.
So income, of course, is your ability to provide value to the market, in a sense that if you're a doctor, you can have high income, you can make 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a month, right? And you're providing that value to that industry, to that market, to that organization. But wealth, and I almost like to kind of, let me distinguish it. I think riches
Hmm.
is the accumulation of your income, but
Okay.
wealth is the accumulation of the labor market, of the labor force,
Hmm.
right? Because when you're accumulating that labor force, now you're allowing other people to bring value in a market, in an organization, and you get to receive the benefits from it. So for example, like I said, a doctor can make 30, 40, $50,000 a month on his own dime, but a doctor cannot go higher unless he has his own practice. But if he's working for a hospital, that's different. But if he has his own practice, then yeah, he can go hire other doctors and possibly benefit from that. But if he's just a doctor working for a hospital, he cannot go out and hire other doctors and train other doctors to go work on his behalf,
Hmm.
right? And so wealth, in my mind, is the accumulation of the labor force. But riches, yes, you can definitely have high income, and you can save up your income, and you can definitely be rich. You can accumulate a lot of money for sure.
And that would be having the equity, which is your income versus your expenses, and so where you have money that's saved, because some
Mhm.
people who just make it and spend it, and therefore they have no savings or equity, whereas those who make a lot of income but save it and build their equity, would that be what you're talking about?
Yeah, and it's funny because as you were speaking, it just came to my mind. We have a lot of and this is kind of, it's in the context, but just a little off. Is that um, all of us, or I shouldn't say all of us, many of us are plagued by what I call consumerism, and what many people call consumerism. But we're plagued by that, so it doesn't matter if you're broke or if you're making high income, because often when you make 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a month, people want to live that type of lifestyle at that level. So instead of saying, I'll just get a regular Honda, even though I make $50,000 a month, they'll say, I'm going to go get a $120,000 Mercedes Benz,
Hmm.
right? Or I want to get the Gucci shoes and the Louis Vuitton shoes and all this kind of stuff, and I want to live in the upscale neighborhood. And hear me out for Ed and everybody that's listening, is if they knew how simple it was to become financially independent, they would be solely focused on that, because mathematically you can make that. They would be solely focused on it. They wouldn't be worried about all this consumerism and I need to look how I need to look to people that really don't even care about me. They say, I'm sprinting towards becoming financially independent. And once I can do that, then I worry about having the house and the cars and all that kind of stuff.
Now, how do they do that?
How do they sprint towards financial independence?
Yes.
Okay. Well, a lot of it is we have to determine what type of lifestyle, how much income that you want to receive at it's essentially financial independence or retirement, how much income you want to receive, how much you need to accumulate, and what it's going to take to do that. What kind of investments? A lot of people don't even look at their investment style or the objective of the investments they're in. They just say, oh, Disney's doing well, or Netflix, or or oh, GameStop when that was a trending thing. But often, and a lot of financial gurus will agree with this. From a baseline perspective, you should be getting into mutual funds. Stocks are fine. There's nothing wrong with stocks, and you can actually make your own mutual fund through a stock portfolio. But um, when you're not quite sure and you're not going to really study stocks and you're not in it for the long haul, you should definitely be involved in mutual funds, and you need to read the objectives. Is the objective of the mutual fund growth, or is it moderate, or is it conservative? Because most people in their 401ks, if they don't do the reading, this is what I often see with my clients, is that if you don't read, then what'll happen is um, they'll put you in a target fund, which usually starts off aggressive, but as time goes on, it becomes more and more conservative. And so you don't really get to that that place of being financially independent, or being in a position to retire at the level of income that you would like by the time you finish working.
So it's like you begin with the end in mind, and then you start with, I guess it's almost like going through school, because you can't do graduate level in kindergarten.
That's
You've
right.
got to start out with where you are, and maybe that's a mutual fund. The more sophisticated and knowledgeable you get, then the more you can move toward more complex
That's
types
correct.
of financial instruments.
That's
And
correct.
so you kind of help them walk through that so that they can kind of see, this is where I am now. You don't want to be going out there trying to be a Warren Buffett when you're just getting started.
That's correct.
So okay, so that's kind of how you help them. Now let me ask this question. You
Mhm.
mentioned the people who they got issues, but they really don't want to talk about it. You can kind of see they make a lot of money, but they're spending as much as they're getting, or they're just starting out and they're not really thinking about things, or their family's there and doesn't have insurance. How do you? And there's a mindset.
Yeah.
And so, how do you deal with a mindset? You can say, I can see how I can help you, but maybe there's resistance. How do you work through that resistance?
That's a great question, and it's always a fun conversation to have with people. And I'm not saying I always win all the conversations, because people may not always have the eyes, or they may not be ready to see
Hmm.
it. But the
Right.
conversation really is, what do you want?
Hmm.
I help paint the picture of what things will look like, or what they would like it to look like. So if we're saying, oh yeah, I'm making all this money, and but I don't need any of that stuff, that's cool. So what is it that 10, 20 years from now, what do you want your life to look like? Or even 5 years from now, what do you want your life to look like? And they say, oh, it's going to be great, it's going to pretty much be the same. Or they might say, well, I got this and this in mind. That's all fine. How are you going to do it? Well, I'm just going to work at it and work at it. Well, wouldn't it? Don't you think it'd be easier if you had a roadmap? Don't you think it would be easier if we had a plan in place? Wouldn't it be easier if you had a partner that has a vested interest in your success? Right. So let's say you're saying, well, I want to move out of this neighborhood and get another house. Well, what is that going to take? What if you're saying you want to buy this kind of car? What is that going to take? What if you say you want your kids to go to this type of school? What is that going to take? And as long as you know the answer, now we can start putting together plans to build that. And so we paint the whole picture. And when I develop solutions for them, and do a budget and all that kind of stuff, I'm saying, hey, look, at based on your budget, we can put money towards this place, and this place, and it'll start building exactly what it is that you want. So by the time the 5 years or the 10 years or the 15 years is up, look, it now you're in position to do exactly what you said to do.
Now, one thing that I look at is there are a lot of people who do not like to share their financial information, even with family members.
Sure.
Have you ever run across that?
Not as often. Usually, I've run across people that want the help, and maybe I do run across it more often than I think, but people that don't want to share their information are not people that I try to push or force to share their information with me, because I understand we're in an information age. People are very sensitive about their data. And I just essentially, like I said, allow people to know what it is that I'm able to do for them and how I can help them. Now, I get it. Some people like they like the guy that has the high rise tower office and can drive the Ferrari or Bentley. And it's funny, that provides some degree of confidence in there, because they're like, oh, if he's driving like this and living like this and wearing, $5,000 suits, he's got to know what to do with money. True. But he also knows how to steal it from you too. But that's neither here nor there. The question was, what do I do? I don't force people to do that. All I do is I have the conversation with them. I share with them what I can do, and just let them know I'm in your corner. If you want the help and the support, I'm in your corner to help you and support you. And when you're ready, I'm here. And if you're not ready, or if you're never ready, that's fine, because that's a choice that they have to make. Right. And that's the thing that I've learned in this business. And some people will say, well, Amos, you're not being aggressive enough. You got to go make them do it. That's just not my philosophy. I don't believe I need to make anybody do anything. I like it. Yeah. All I can do is present what's available to you. That's all I can do. This is what's available to you. And if you don't like those options, then that's fine. I would say go find the options that you feel will be best for you.
Absolutely. Now, the thing that I think about is this is definitely your passion, but even with passion, there's sometimes you have the rough spots. So what's the toughest thing you face, and how did you deal with it? And it could be work, it could be life, it could be whatever.
Well, there's a lot of things that have been tough throughout life. Often from a work perspective, it's juggling many clients. It's developing curriculum, it's developing training, it's developing all those things. And while I do have a team that I work with to help, often as the leader, I'm skilled, obviously, in with a background in computer science, and I'm skilled being fully licensed. So a lot of information and content, I have to be able to manifest it and to develop it and to create it. And until I can hire more people on, it can definitely be overwhelming in those areas. But I would say from a personal perspective, and this is where a lot of growth comes in, was it started probably in middle school, where the first time I went out of this country by myself. And I went to Australia and New Zealand as a student ambassador. And, there's that initial fear of leaving your family. You're leaving your family, you're going to a place you don't know anybody, you don't have, and you're out there. And it takes a huge level of growth, a huge level of maturity to be able to do something like that and to overcome that fear and say to yourself and know that God has you. God's got your back. Same thing. A lot of people don't know this, but I spent 2 years in Afghanistan as a contractor. Wasn't a part of the military, but just as a contractor. And this was during 2013 to 2015. So there were still some skirmishes and some war type stuff going on. And a lot of people were afraid to go over there, but I went over there. And yeah, there was that uneasiness that, I could get blown up, I could get shot. But you know what? There was that peace that came over me that said, you know what? God was like, I got you. You'll be fine. And so even in the business world, where sometimes I feel like I get overwhelmed and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much that I got to do. God's like, I got you. You'll be fine. And so I would say that those are some of the toughest situations I faced and how I was able to overcome them.
And it sounds like the most important thing is your faith.
Yeah.
So Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we close? This is half hour's gone by so quickly. So any parting words?
Yeah, just for people that are looking to progress financially, definitely go out, find a coach, find a tutor, find a mentor, find an advisor, somebody that you like and trust. Because mathematically, guys, nobody is incapable of not becoming financially independent, and nobody came into this life saying, you know what I want to do? I want to work for 30 or 40 years to end up broke. Nobody
Right.
has ever said that. So this is your life. You got one life. Um, do what you need to do. Put the money aside. Don't get caught up into this consumerism, and go leave a legacy for yourself and for your family.
The one thing you mentioned, you said that people should find somebody, a coach, a mentor, or whatever.
Mhm.
You're a coach, a mentor. Well, how could people contact you?
Well, people can easily contact me at this moment by email. The email address is educationandexecution@gmail.com. That's education and execution spelled exactly how it sounds at gmail.com. And if they're interested in participating in one of our free classes, they can go to Eventbrite, and the keyword they can search for financial power, which is the name of our class. And we actually have a class that's getting ready to start up with the target date of April 18th. So they can join, they can register, and the classes are a lot of fun. We're very engaging. We focus on making it fun. We focus on making the content impactful, and we try to focus on making it something that people can actually use to move forward and execute on the dreams that they want.
Well, thank you so much, Amos. I really appreciate the information that you provided for us today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And once again, folks, this is the Edward Jones, the life coach for Pro Destiny Coaching. Whenever you have an issue at work or whatever and want to learn how to get better, definitely tune into my podcast and my Power Me Up radio show, which comes on at 7:30 a.m. on Mondays on iHeart, the station with heart on iHeart. But again, this is WRM, Work Relationships Matter. And remember that work relationships work for those who work on them. Welcome to WRM, Work Relationships Matter. I'm your host, the Edward Jones, a certified life coach who specializes in work relationships. No matter what type of work you do, work relationships matter. My guests have been successful because they've been able to develop and maintain excellent relationships. Azizza Davis, President and CEO of the Sacramento Black Chamber of Commerce, is here today to share her thoughts and experiences that will be beneficial to you. Welcome, Azizza.
Well, thank you for having me, Edward. And I hope that they are beneficial. Whatever information I can impart, I'm certainly willing and wanting to do that.
And I know it's going to be because we've worked together for years gone by, and I was reminding some of your staff about the Young Entrepreneurs Program that we started
Yes,
way back
wait,
in the day.
we're
And so
graduating our 13th cohort this month.
that is just amazing. It's like time just flies. So
Indeed,
anyway,
it
but
does.
that was a great experience, and I know, and I still run into some of those people, and they still remember that first cohort. So
Yes,
if that alone is that one, but 13, 1 times 13 or whatever it is, that just shows how much more that's happening with that one. Now,
absolutely.
one thing that I know, I've gone to the Sacramento Black Chamber mixers, put my name tag on, and the first thing people ask me is, "What do I do?" And I know that happens to you all the time when people
Hmm.
who don't know you. So what I want to do is talk about what you do, but before we go there, I want to learn a little bit more about Azizza, how you got started, your backstory, and maybe people who've influenced you over the years, maybe at a young age and brought you forward. Give us a little bit of the backstory about Azizza.
Sure. Well, thank you for asking because people don't ask for backstories. You're absolutely right. But I'm from the East Coast. I'm from the New York, New Jersey area. And I came from a family of people that were in service. My mother and grandmother were both nurses. And I thought that that was probably the path that I was going to take. It was either that or I was going to be back in the day. And I'm not afraid to tell my age. I'm 71 years old. But I didn't know to be anything other than a nurse, a teacher, or a secretary. That's pretty much all that was offered to us at that time. And I loved the work that my mother and my grandmother were doing, so I thought that I was going to do the same thing. I tried it. I went into becoming a candy striper. If you remember candy stripers in the house volunteers.
I do.
I was a candy striper for probably a year or so before I realized that was not the work that I could do. It was, I don't know if it was, I didn't realize it then, but I was just had too much empathy. And you can have too much empathy to be effective in the work that you're doing. And I had to find another way to be in service. And so I did, and got involved in the YMCA when I was very young, and tell people that my mom dropped me off at the Y and forgot to pick me up. And that's how I got involved in nonprofit work. And that's what I've been doing all of my life. I don't know how to do anything else other than nonprofit work.
Now, was there anybody who was doing nonprofit work that you saw at the Y that you said, oh, I like what this person is doing? Was there anybody like that?
There were a couple of people. They were my mentors. One was a guy by the name of Bob Slater, who's not with us anymore, but Bob was an amazing individual who cared so much about people that we refer to now and what I was at that time, belonging to an underrepresented community. And he really wanted to make sure that we received the education and outreach that we deserved. And I got involved in a mentoring program with him and his partner, Norma Peniston. We used to call her Penny. And I don't know, my life would have been very, very different had they not been a part of my growing up years. I kept up with Penny until she passed away several years ago, and I would call her on her birthday every year and apologize to her for the way I treated her when I was a kid. I always started the conversation off that way.
Now, what was it that they were doing that got you going? Because the idea of a candy striper, my older sister was a candy striper, and my daughter would be great in the hospital, but I don't think I got the stomach for it. But anyway, what was it that they were doing that you say, I want to do this?
Well, I don't think at that time I wanted to necessarily do that, but I do appreciate the guidance that they gave me and the support that they gave me. I was in a family, there were 4 children and my mom. My mom was a single parent. I was the oldest of the 4, and never really felt like I had much of a childhood. I was raising my siblings while my mother was working. And so having these mentors really kind of provided the guidance and the support that I had hoped I could have gotten from my parents. And they stepped into that role and really listened to me. They really cared about me. They really listened and were non-judgmental and gave me all of the support that I needed. And it finally encouraged me to go to college because I had no intentions of going to college. And then when I finally got into school, I decided that I was going to become the first Black woman on the federal Supreme Court. Okay. A job that was just taken, by the way.
Right.
But I remember at the time, my political science instructor told me that I should not go into politics in any shape or form because I wore my heart on my sleeve and I had too much heart, too much compassion for politics, and told me that I should find another path. And so that's how I got involved in kind of doing social work and nonprofit work. And the college that I was in was affiliated with the YMCA and really focused on people that were doing that kind of work. So that's kind of how I fell into it.
Okay. So in college, so what was your major political science or was
political science? Political science and history.
And history, okay.
Yeah.
Well, very good.
But I never left the YMCA. I never was far from my mentors, and I wanted to do what they did for me, for others. for people that were
Okay.
younger than me. So I became a mentor. And to this day, Ed, I'm always mentoring. I think that's the heart of who I am and what I do, is mentoring others.
So how did you get into chamber work?
There was chamber work. It's a nonprofit organization, but when I moved back to California in 1990, I met a couple of members. I was actually working for the Convention and Visitors Bureau at that time here in Sacramento. And the Convention and Visitors Bureau, believe it or not, was a nonprofit organization. So I was still in that nonprofit arena. I was asked to sit on the board of the Sacramento Black Chamber of Commerce. That was a relatively new organization then. And I sat on the board for a couple of years, but I needed to really kind of refocus my work because I was new to the area and knew that the Convention and Visitors Bureau was not where I wanted to be as a career path, but the nonprofit piece was. Anyway, I sat on the board for a couple of years, did some other nonprofit work here in the Sacramento area. I was CEO for Big Brothers Big Sisters for a while, also executive director for the Alzheimer's Association, always kind of hard work, always done hard work. And finally, I was asked to kind of build some capacity and infrastructure in the Sacramento Black Chamber of Commerce's business. And I said, okay, I'll give you 5 years and I'll do that. And that was 15 years ago. So I've been here for 15 years now. So it wasn't so much the chamber as it was doing the work and being that mentor and giving the space, being able to be in that space where I could help others to grow and realize what their dreams were. And that happens to be working with entrepreneurs.
Right. And you've done a lot of different things in the heart work, as you call it. And so no matter what, you were going to be doing hard work.
No matter, it had to be hard work. I tried, I think, for 4 years to work in corporate America, and I hated every second of it. I was so much a fish out of water. It was just not for me, not where I belonged.
What was it about it that kind of what wasn't you?
It was impersonal. It was nobody really knew me. I worked for a large computer company in New York for about 4 years, and nobody knew me. Nobody really cared about me. Nobody really wanted to know me. And when I would try to know other people in that space, they weren't interested in allowing me to know who they were either. It was a corporation. It was a machine, and that's not in my DNA.
That makes sense.
So I left.
Okay. And that's when you came back to California?
Yes, that's exactly. I'll never forget, I left the job on a Friday and told some of my coworkers, I said, I probably won't be back here anymore. And they laughed. They thought it was a joke, but they knew I wasn't happy. And in that place of work, if you didn't show up for 3 consecutive days without calling in, it was an automatic dismissal. And I lamented those 3 days. What do I call? Do I go in? Do I call? And finally, the third day at 5 o'clock came, and I felt this wash of freedom over me that I hadn't felt in a long time, and I knew I had made the right decision. So 3 weeks later, I packed up what I could and took the train and moved back to California from New York.
Okay, that is quite a story. But your heart told you where to be.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
I never looked back.
Okay, well, excellent. Now, so obviously, I look at this and I have one question about: did your career choose you, or did you choose it? Would you say that
it chose
your
me.
career chose you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It absolutely chose me.
All right. Well, tell me about the chamber and how you work with clients. What is your process of working with clients? Just kind of give an overview of the chamber and how you help people.
So our mission is to provide the tools necessary for upcoming entrepreneurs to be successful, and to provide them with whatever guidance and that they need to be successful in their businesses. And we do that in a number of ways, as you know. Most of them think that what they need is a business card and an opportunity to network. They don't know that they need to know about HR and business licenses and getting prepared so that they can bid on procurement opportunities that our municipalities have for them. There's so much more to running a business than just having a business card and being around other business people who are in the same position, by the way, that they're in. They're all wanting to grow their business, but not really looking at the bigger picture in terms of what it's going to take to run a business. So we provide all of that and a lot of resources.
Okay. So basically, if someone comes in, and one thing obviously they talk about the great resignation with COVID. So many people resigning. They said, was it 1 month, 4.3 million people resigned their jobs and went into business for themselves. And one thing that I was actually reading an article in the Observer that said that the fastest growing entrepreneurial group are African American women.
Yes.
Who did not like corporate life.
Sound familiar? Yes, we are. We are. We have been seeing it for quite some time. Even prior to COVID, it was always African American women had the largest number of small businesses. And we don't even, most of those businesses that we work with, I wouldn't even consider small businesses. They're more micro enterprises. They have 1 to 5 employees. Typically, the employees are family members of the owner of the business. And so they're not even considered small businesses. But I have to tell you, and I'm so proud of this fact, that when COVID hit, we had a membership of about a little over 200 members at the time. And we are member driven. So all of the services that we provide are for our members. It was such a tough time for them, but those members got through it and we didn't lose one business during COVID.
Wow.
Yep, the Sacramento Black Chamber of Commerce did a fabulous job of making sure that our businesses were able to get those resources that they needed to keep their doors open. We're very proud of that.
So did you do the PPP loan? Where those loans were? I forgot what the acronym was.
Yes, it was. It was PPP loans, but it was also PPE that they needed to keep those storefronts open so that they could allow people to come in and out of their businesses. They needed gloves, they needed masks, they needed thermometers, they needed to know their bankers, because those that were applying for those PPP loans, if they didn't have a relationship with a banker, chances are they weren't going to get that loan.
Okay.
But as being chamber members, one of the things that we do is put our members in front of people like that and teach them the importance of building relationships. It's, as you said at the top of your program, it's all about relationship building, all about it. And so our members did very, very well because they did have those relationships that they could rely on to get the funding that they needed to keep their doors open.
Now, because there was one woman I interviewed, and she had a kind of a similar thing. She was actually raising her daughter, and she said she just stayed with the job until her daughter graduated from high school. So I'll hang in here. And then as the day her daughter graduated, she said, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And she had no business experience whatsoever and went through the school of hard knocks, figuring it out. So basically, when people come to you, I always say it's good to go to rather than just go from.
Right.
Because so when you're going from, you're thinking, okay, I'm getting out of here. Well, where are you going? And
exactly.
So the thing is that, so do you have a lot of people who just say, I'm fed up with where I'm going, I have no knowledge, I just want to do my own business? Or do people come with a level of knowledge about business or is it all over the board?
Yeah, they don't they're not necessarily running from, but they're following a dream.
Okay.
They're following something that they've wanted to do for a very long time. But it takes a lot of.
Oh my goodness. Let me do that. I should have
Sure.
turned it off. Okay. Yeah. Sorry
No
about
problem.
that.
That's life. That's life
Yeah.
happening over there.
Right.
But they've had a dream,
Right.
and they finally got to a point where they were going to take the plunge
Okay.
and try to figure out that business that they wanted. I think culturally we are entrepreneurs at heart,
Right.
and I think that trying to do both is one of the things that I tell people all the time, because there are some folks that try to do both. They'll try to keep that government job or whatever
Hmm.
job they have, and also try to start a business or raise a
Right.
business. And you're just rarely going to be successful doing that. You
Hmm.
need to make that commitment and put your all into what you're doing. And it's going to be hard, but it's also been hard for you to spend 18, 20, 25 years going to a job every day that has not fed your soul.
Well, one thing I think about, I know one reason, what you say makes perfect sense, but one reason I think people hold on, and this is what people have told me, the benefits, the
Yes.
health insurance,
Yep.
all these things like that. So having to have enough resource to be able to cover that retirement and everything else. So that's the scary thing. That's
Yeah.
that velvet chain that keeps them hooked.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But you notice now, with everybody leaving their jobs,
Mhm.
that nobody seems to be as concerned about those issues as they were before. And
Right.
they're getting along fine. They're finding
Mhm.
ways to make sure that they do have that insurance and that they do have um, some kind of resources, that they wouldn't be able to leave the jobs away and the droves that they're leaving. So it's
Right.
just a change in attitude. It's a change in mind. It's a change in what's really important to them. I think
Mhm.
COVID has given us an opportunity to sit down and dig deep inside of ourselves to figure out who we are. It gave us a quiet moment. It gave us a
Right.
time so we could just sit down and kind of figure out who you really are and what you really, really desired to put out here on this
Mhm.
planet,
Right.
and take that plunge.
Okay. Now, the question I ask everyone, what is the toughest situation you faced? Could have been in work, any part of your life, because the main thing we
Mm.
look at, as I mentioned before we got started, that everybody goes through something. Successful people, you can see them all dressed up smiling, but they've been through something. They had to overcome it. So what's the toughest situation you faced, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I'll share this story with you, and I don't share it often with many people, and now I'm sharing it on a podcast. But when I was 17 years old, and it was during the Vietnam War,
Mhm.
and I had declared myself as a pacifist. I still am to this day. I abhor violence of any kind for any reason.
Mhm.
And a girlfriend of mine and I had gone to Washington. She was my best friend. Had gone to
Okay.
Washington D.C. one day on a bus um, to let our voices be heard about the fact that we hated this war and we wanted the war to end.
Right.
Um, and we were very sad coming back home on the bus when the president announced it, even with all of the noise that we were making, that the war wasn't going in. And we were kind of sad about it, and
Right.
decided to take a bus over to New York City one evening, which was only 20 minutes away from where we lived in New Jersey,
Right.
and go to a disco to try to cheer ourselves up.
Mhm.
And that night, our parents were very close, our families were very close, and I called my mom and told her that I was going to be spending the night at my girlfriend's house, and she was fine with that. To
Mhm.
make a long story short, on the way home that evening around midnight, we were taking a shortcut through a park, and we were accosted by a man who beat us and literally killed my girlfriend.
Oh
Um,
no! Wow.
yeah, and I got
Man.
beat up pretty badly myself, but
Yeah.
I survived it. Um,
Right.
and in retrospect, I think we both knew, even at the time that it happened, that we probably could have overtaken him, but we weren't gonna be violent. It just wasn't in us to be violent.
Mhm.
And so I knew then that my life was going to change. I knew
Right.
right then and there that there were going to be some things that were going to happen in my life that I had not prepared for, but that I would spend my life in a life of service. I knew it from that moment on.
Okay.
Even to the point of not even to the point of not necessarily wanting this guy to get caught because I knew they'd kill him.
Okay.
And I didn't, and obviously somebody that does that to strangers is not well.
Right.
And her family was very influential in town. And I knew that if they had caught him, they would have killed him. So I secretly prayed that they didn't, because I'm sure that that man didn't have a good life after that. There's nothing that could have been good in his life. But I knew that my life was going to be a life of service for sure after that.
Wow. So did you go to counseling? How did you recover from that? Because that's psychologically, that had to be hard.
Absolutely. I've been in therapy. I had been in, after that, I was in therapy for years.
Okay.
And use a lot of the skills that I learned to live with that, because you don't forget it. It doesn't go away. And it certainly does something to your core. But a lot of what I've learned through that, I'm able to pass on to other people.
Okay. That is amazing. I mean, that is the thing that I always say whenever I do these. There are people that I've known for years like you. And when I do these podcasts, I find out things about people that I never knew, not even close.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm still a pacifist.
Okay.
I still don't believe in violence of any kind under any circumstances. I think that it saddens me that so many people don't have a value on life and are willing to kill for literally nothing. But I also understand that there is a sickness, an illness, something missing in these people's lives. And the best that I can do is what I can to mentor folks so that they don't fall prey to that missing piece in their soul.
But now the question I have is, with that level of magnanimity, does that come from your faith, or where does that come from?
I honestly don't know. I don't know where it comes from. I'm rather agnostic in my religious beliefs. I believe that we all have the same thing. We all come here with the same thing, but how we treat it and how important we make it into our lives makes us who we are. And I just chose very early in my life that I wanted to give back, that I needed to give back.
Okay. Right. And that is just, I mean, like I said, it's just in your soul to do that. And so I think people who have the faith base don't have that type of magnanimity to be able to forgive something that horrific.
Yeah. I don't know. You know what? I don't know that I forgive. I just, because I think it was evil. And I but I know that I have to keep going and I have to do what I can to keep others out of situations like that if I can.
Right.
And it all comes down to mentoring and helping people understand who they are and why they're here.
Okay. Well, one thing I would say is that, and the same with some people, when they say hurt people, so sometimes people were hurt, they become bitter, but you actually became, in terms of helping people, better.
I did, but I was bitter for a while. It's not that I didn't go through that bitterness. I was bitter for a while. I was angry. But at the same time, I've always known that there was some inkling of leadership in my DNA. And when I recognized that and started working towards being an effective leader, I wanted to be a leader for good. I didn't want to be a leader for bad. And so I was able to work through that bitterness and that anger and support others in their missions.
Well, that's great. And the thing I think about leadership, and I guess I think about, I'll ask you about your leadership style, but I talked with two of your staff, and they're both such positive people. I think it's Susan and Eric, and they are just so upbeat. And they always say that that culture comes from the top, or things like that. So how would you describe your leadership style?
I'm not always upbeat. I'll tell you that, because it's a tough job.
Right. Oh, yeah, I know that. Yes.
But I surround myself with good people, with people that can help me to get the work done that we need to get done.
Mhm.
And they know me and they believe in the mission as I do. And so we work intensely to do what we're supposed to do for our members. And
Right.
it's a lot of work because we're doing advocacy work, we're doing education, we're traveling, we're in typically in Africa at least once a year. We're in
Mhm.
Washington, D.C. once a year with the Congressional Black Caucus. We've got leadership programs of our own that we're running. One that we just finished up with the Fortune School, Market Fortune School,
Right.
teaching parents how to become effective advocates.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of different components to running a nonprofit organization. And my biggest job is fundraising. I've got to raise the funds to keep the doors open. So I've got to have really good staff around me who can, can help me and be supportive of me doing that and allowing me to do that. And I've been really fortunate.
They're just so, just so engaging. I stress what's not is, and they say it's not what happens, but how you handle it. And they seem to be just, because I've talked to them, just kind of getting everything coordinated.
Uh-huh.
You're on vacation and they're doing this, but they're always listening, getting back, not rushing. Just always, yeah, and I'll do that. I'll try that. We've been really busy, but they don't, you've been in organizations where people, you can tell they're harried and they're, you kind of feel it.
You can feel it,
But
sure.
I did not feel that and I talked to both of them probably 2 or 3 times each of them.
Sure. They're great people. And
I just
that's just half of the staff
going on there that gives them that, whatever it is, relationship skill.
What's really interesting, my ability to identify people that will fit into that culture sometimes even astounds me. But I remember telling them, and I tell them this all the time, that they were hired to do a job that I don't know how to do. I couldn't do their jobs. And so I want them to be their best and do their best. And I will never interfere with that. If they need advice from me, if whatever they need from me, I want to give them the tools that they need to be successful. I want them to be successful and feel good about the work that they're doing, both personally and professionally. But I don't want them to come to me and ask me every little thing. I want them to be creative. I want them to feel that they know exactly what they're doing. And when they don't, of course, my door is always open to them. But I'm not the kind of manager that's going to, nitpick at every little thing. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to learn from them. I want them to learn from me. And I want it to be a safe place for them the environment to be a safe place for them to work in.
Great.
Susan told me I'll never forget her telling me one time, she says, I've never worked in a place like this. She said, I feel like a bird in a cage and somebody opened the cage and wants me to come out and I'm peeking out. I'm not sure what to do once I get out there because nobody's ever allowed me to do that before. And I thought that was such a compliment.
It is. So she's getting that freedom and starting to flap those wings.
Yeah.
Now, this 30 minutes just goes by so darn fast.
I know it does.
It's amazing. But is there any last words that you would have, advice or whatever it might be? And also, if people want to learn more about you or the chamber, give us that contact information.
Sure. I want to say, first of all, that don't underestimate the importance of a mentor. Even in your adulthood, even as an adult, you want people that can be supportive and can and not be judgmental, and listen to them if they've got experience in something that you're looking to get engaged in. Mentoring is so very important. I'm sure it saved my life. And then the other thing is, we would love to see people. By the way, our membership is well over 400 now since COVID. Since COVID. But give us a call at area code 916-231-0416, and you will talk to either Susan or Eric, or you can go to our website at www.sacblackchamber.org. You can find us there, or I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. They call me the the queen of social media, so I can be found
Okay.
anywhere.
Great. Great. Well, Azizza, thank you so very much for being our guest today.
It's been my pleasure.
And folks, I am the Edward Jones, and this is WRM Work Relationships Matter. I know you gained a lot from this episode. To learn more about my coaching practice, go to www.prodestinycoaching.com, take the quiz, and we will have a complimentary coaching session to tell you more about what I do. But most of all, remember that work relationships work for those who work on them.